Okay, so welcome to my reveal slash showcase slash review video of the Codex Salamanders supplement, which is available from pre-order today, and you can buy it from Games Workshop on the 26th of October. As ever, thank you to Games Workshop for sending it through to me and to a few lucky other people out there in internet land, so we can get our mitts on it and give you guys a taste of what's inside this book. And as ever, you don't need this book if you're playing Codex Salamanders or one of their successor chapters. You can just use the Codex Space Marines book if you want to. This supplement gives you additional stratagems, relics, warlord traits, things like that you can add to your Salamanders or your successors of Salamanders. You don't need it, but you're probably going to want it because it's very good. As Salamanders stand on their own, they're already very good. Their chapter tactic is one of the better ones because it's turned on all the time. Salamanders get free rerolls across the board. Every single unit gets the free reroll all the time. Whenever they shoot or fight, that A unit gets to reroll one hit roll and reroll one wound roll. It makes them good already. And they can also ignore AP -1 modifiers when they're getting hit back again. That's in close combat or when you shoot them. Ignoring that AP -1 is good. I like that. And having the free reroll to hit once and free reroll to wound once comes in very, very handy for them. So they're already a strong chapter. They already have a better chapter tactic than some of the others. The Imperial Fist, for example, when they shoot, they ignore cover. That isn't turned on all the time. You might be shooting at a unit that isn't in cover, therefore you don't get the benefit of the Siege Master from the Imperial Fist. But Salamanders, rerolling a hit and rerolling a wound all the time, it's a good one. It makes them a bit more aggressive. It makes them a bit more pokey than some of the other standard stuff. But what additional stuff do they get in Codex Supplement Salamanders? Well, hopefully you already know about Devastator, Tactical, and the Assault doctrines, and when the Tactical doctrine is active. Any attack made by a flame or melter weapon, add 1 to the wound roll. So if you're bringing a Salamanders or successor, whenever the Tactical doctrine is active, and a unit is shooting with a flamer or a melter weapon, you add 1 to the wound roll. That's very good. Let's immediately start thinking about Invicta Warsuits. That means their Incendium Cannon, which is heavy. When you're using that, when the Tactical doctrine is in effect, at strength 5, -1 AP, that's going to be wounding most infantry on 2s at -1 AP all the time. Or let's think about Flamer Aggressors. Flamer Aggressors, they're strength 4, AP dash, but when the Tactical doctrine is in effect, Flamer Aggressors are AP -1, and at strength 4 with +1 to wound, they're going to be wounding most infantry on a 3-up. So your Invicta Warsuits are going to be wounding most infantry on a 2-up. Flamer Aggressors will be wounding most things on a 3-up. But even all the way up to toughness 7, your Flamer Aggressors will be wounding things on a 4-up, for example, and your Invicta Warsuits will be wounding things on a 3-up, which is, it's nice. It's that extra poke, that extra punch, that having that add 1 ability to the wound roll is good. And remember, Salamanders reroll a hit roll, reroll a wound roll every time as well. It makes Salamanders quite aggressive. And also, if you really want to abuse the stratagem, you're going to have to add flamer weapons or melter weapons. So I was thinking in Primaris mainly lists, you're looking at Invicta Warsuits and you're looking at Flamer Aggressors. If you're thinking about old school Tactical Marines, then even a Tactical Squad with a Melter Combi Melter in it, adding 1 to the wound roll. Melters are strength 8, right? Some tanks are toughness 8, but with that +1 to wound, you'll be wounding them on 3s. At toughness 7 vehicles with a melter weapon, you're going to be wounding them on 2s with your Melter Combi Melter. Remember, you've got that reroll to hit, reroll to wound once per unit. A unit dropping out of a drop pod. So a unit of Stern Guard veterans, all with Combi Melters, pouring out of a drop pod. You probably want 4 or 5 Combi Melters coming out of a drop pod. You land it behind a vehicle somewhere and you shoot. You're hitting on 3s, but you're re-rolling one of those hit rolls. Melters are strength 8, so typically you're wounding on 3s, but against toughness 7 or less vehicles, you're going to be wounding on 2s, and you're going to be re-rolling one of those wound rolls. So, yeah. Well, this Tactical doctrine is active when resolving an attack made with a flame or melter weapon. With this ability, add 1 to the wound roll. It's pokey. And at the risk of repeating myself, that's only when the Tactical doctrine is in effect. But if you're going to want to build your lists around having as many melters and flamers that you can get in it as possible. It makes Salamanders aggressive. So Warlord traits. There's 6 Warlord traits in here for Salamanders and their successors. The first one is add 2 to the strengths characteristics of this Warlord. That's a nice little one. Miraculous Constitution. When this Warlord would lose a wound, roll a d6. On a 6-up, that wound is not lost. In addition, at the start of your movement phase, this Warlord gains 1 lost wound. So they've got a 6-up, feel no pain, and they're gaining a wound a turn. Never give up. At the start of the battle round, you can select 1 friendly Salamanders unit within 6 inches of this Warlord, and until the end of that battle round, this unit has the Defenders of Humanity ability. Troops have the Defenders of Humanity ability anyway. It makes them objective secured, but you can point this at a unit such as a vehicle, for example, or some Terminators within 6 inches of the Warlord, and that gives them that objective secured ability. Number 4 is Forge Master. Add 2 to the toughness characteristics of this Warlord. That's very interesting, particularly in Terminator armor or Gravis armor. Having a toughness 6 or toughness 7 Warlord is it's interesting, particularly if you're thinking about a jump captain, for example. Typically, jump captains are getting hit and wounded on 4s. But your jump captain, if you're making toughness 6, will be wounded on 5s against all those anti-infantry weaponry when he goes charging in there. Lord of Fire, you can re-roll the dice to determine the number of attacks made with flame weapons by friendly salamander models while they're within 6 inches of this Warlord. So that's the one that you bring. You bring your Warlord, preferably in this case, you'd make him a lieutenant or lieutenant. And he'd be and the reason why you're doing that is because you make this guy with your flamer aggressors and you stick him in cover somewhere, or be quite aggressive with your aggressors. And you're re-rolling. So flame weapons in your aggressors there are d6 number of auto hits, and you'll re-roll. You hit all your d6s, see which ones you don't like, and re-roll those ones that you don't like. And there's a lieutenant that you've chucked this on, because lieutenants re-roll 1s to wound. And remember, your flamers in those aggressor squads will be +1 to wound. So they're going to be strength 4, and anything at toughness 4, or 5, or 6, or 7, they're going to be wounding on. Anything at toughness 5, 6, or 7, they're going to be wounding on 4s. Anything on toughness 4 or less, they're going to be wounding. Toughness 4, they're going to be wounding on 3s, and less than that, they're going to be wounding on 2s. And re-rolling 1s to wound, and re-rolling how many auto hits that you have with your flamer weapon. Lord of Fire. That's very good. And patient and determined. Once per shooting phase or once per fight phase, when resolving an attack made by this Warlord, do not make a hit roll. It automatically scores a hit. I like it. And it's once per phase, once per shooting, and or once per fight phase. You just automatically hit. But I think quite clearly the best one in there is that Lord of Fire, which is re-roll the number of attacks made with flame weapons within 6 inches of your Warlord. And the best way to use that would be to stick it on a lieutenant, I think, because they automatically hit. You don't need it with a captain. You need it with something that gives you that extra re-roll 1s to wound buff. I like it. Salamanders and their successors have access to the Promethean psychic disciplines. Flaming Blast. Flaming Blast has a walk charge value of 6. If manifested, select 1 point on the battlefield within 24 inches invisible to the Psyker and roll 1d6 for every enemy unit within 3 inches of that point. And on a 4-up, that suffers 1 mortal wound. So it's a bit like Orbital Bombardment. You need a 6 to cast it. Then you need a point within 24 inches. And then you need to roll a 4-up to hit enemy units to cause a mortal wound to enemy units within 3 inches of that point. Now, typically, Orbital Bombardments and things like that, people don't bring them, because there's a lot of dice rolling there just to do a 1 mortal wound. But with a 24-inch range on that, that's quite useful. That one you might actually see. Fire Shield. Number 2 is Fire Shield, which has a walk charge value of 6. And if manifested, select 1 friendly Salamander unit within 18 inches of this Psyker until the start of your next Psychic phase. When resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon against that unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. In addition, when a charge roll is made for a charge, that unit is the target of, subtract 1 from the results. So again, this is, for a walk charge value of 6, this is a good one because it's 18 inches of the Psyker. You pick any friendly unit within 18 inches of him. And it doesn't say line of sight. It just says within 18 inches of him. And then it's -1 to hit that unit and -1 to charge that unit. That's a very, very good psychic power. Burning Hands has a walk charge value of 6, and if manifested, until the start of your next psychic phase when resolving an attack made with a close combat weapon, which can be found in the Warhammer 40k rulebook for a psyker. If a hit is scored, the target suffers 1 mortal wound and the attack sequence ends. Drakeskin. I don't know. 1 minute. If a hit is scored, the target suffers 1 mortal wound. So it's a walk charge value of 6. Does that mean you only can, when resolve an attack with a close combat weapon, which can be found, if a hit is scored, the target suffers. So if you get 6 hits, do you get 6 mortal wounds? I doubt it. I think it says as soon as a hit is scored, you suffer 1 mortal wound. It doesn't seem to be. I think that one will need a fact. Whether you can do multiple mortal wounds with multiple hits, or as soon as you do a hit. I suppose when, I don't know. Drakeskin has a walk charge value of 6. If manifested, select 1 for any Salamanders unit within 12 inches of the psyker until the start of your next psychic phase. Add 1 to the toughness characteristics of models in that unit. That one's very good as well. 6 in walk charge value of 6. It's within 12 inches, and it doesn't say, for example, it doesn't say Salamander's infantry unit. It's any Salamander's unit. You can make your, so repulsors are pretty good, and their equivalents are pretty good because they're toughness 8, but you can make your predators toughness 8, you can make your dreadnoughts toughness 8, you can make your repulsors and your ironclads toughness 9 if you want to. So within 12 inches, boom, give them an extra toughness. Along with that, fire shield, you could stack it with that. You could, if you really want a unit to stay alive, give it an extra toughness so long as they're within 12 inches. And they will be within 18 inches for fire shield, so boom. You could also make it -1 to hit for your opponent as well. Those 2 abilities are very good. Fury of Nocturne has a walk charge value of 6. If manifested, select 1 enemy unit within 18 inches and visible to psycho and roll 2d6. If the result is greater than the models, greater than the highest toughness characteristic of the models in that unit, it suffers d3 mortal wounds. So it's 2d6 to beat the toughness of a unit to do d3 mortal wounds. We're going to see that one because it's 18-inch range and it's like an extra smite. So your librarian could do an 18-inch smite, bang, and do d3 mortal wounds, and then your librarian does this one and on 2d6 needs to beat a toughness, bang, does d3 mortal wounds again. So you get a d3 with your smite and d3 with Fury of Nocturne. It'll work against infantry units mainly, obviously stuff with a lower toughness because you need to beat it. It doesn't say equal or beat it, it just says beat it. But we'll see that one, that's nice. And then the last one, Draconic Aspect, has a walk charge value of 6 if manifested. Then until the start of your next psychic phase, subtract 2 from the leadership characteristics of models in enemy units while they're within 12 inches of the psyker. That's a -2 12-inch bubble. Very situational, but against units that struggle with leadership, Tau, gun lines, a guard, maybe, it could hurt. It could hurt. But the ones that we're really going to look at, really going to see again and again, is the fire shield, the -1 to hit and the -1 to charge, the Drakeskin, which is the increased toughness. Those 2 seem like auto-includes for me if you're rocking a Salamanders or Successor list. Right, let's have a look at these stratagems because there are some incredibly powerful ones in here. For 2 CP, the very first one, Flamecraft, is one of the incredibly powerful ones in there. Do you remember I told you Invictor Warsuits are going to be an auto-include? 3 Invictor Warsuits if you're bringing Salamanders along because they're strength 5, -1, 1 damage. Well, and you're going to, as soon as the tactical doctrine is in effect, that's going to be strength 5, but +1 to the wound roll. Well, Flamecraft, basically you pick a unit for 2 CP and you pick the flame weapon, a flame weapon on that unit, and instead of rolling the number of dice to determine how many auto hits it does, it automatically does the highest. So until the end of that phase, when a model in that unit shoots with a flame weapon. So the Invictor Warsuit does 2d6 auto hits with a flame weapon with the Incendium Cannon. So instead of rolling 2d6 and find out how many auto hits it is, it's an automatic 6 hits with that 12 hits, sorry. Instead of rolling 2d6, it's an automatic 12 hits. The highest possible score with that flame weapon. 12 auto hits with a strength 5 -1 cannon with a +1 to wound, and you're getting your free roll reroll, your free reroll as well. It's fruity. This will also work on your aggressors as well, because it says when a model in that unit shoots with a flame weapon, do not roll to determine the number of attacks made with that weapon. So on your flamer aggressors, you pick one of them, and when that model shoots with a flame weapon and they've got 2 flame weapons, you don't roll to determine. So they'd also, instead of rolling 2d6 when they're firing with their flame weapons, they'll automatically get 12 hits rather than rolling the 2d6. Flamecraft, it's brutal. I like it. But it gets even worse. The second one, stack straight away for 1 CP, Crucible of Battle. Basically pick a Salamander's unit when it's chosen to shoot or fight. Again, any Salamander's unit doesn't have to be infantry. It could be in a tank. It could be Devastators. It could be any Salamander's unit when they're chosen to shoot or fight, and the models in that unit add 1 to the wound roll. It's nice. And that's not with any flame weapon. That's just, they just add 1 to the wound roll. So when you're firing away with bolt guns, you can add 1 to wound. But if you're firing away with flame weapons, for example, and the tactical doctrine is in effect, and you pop this stratagem, you're going to be adding 1 to the wound roll for Crucibles of Battle, and you're going to be adding 1 because of their generic ability that they have. So again, go back to the Invicta tactical war suit with the strength 5 incendiing cannon. If he uses that while the tactical doctrine is in effect, and with Crucible of Battle on him, he'll be wounding knights on a 2 with a flame weapon. And if you put Flamecraft on it, that'd be 12 auto hits, wounding knights on 2s at -1 damage. Not enough to kill a knight, but if there's a knight there with 8 or 9 wounds left, it might be enough to polish them off. And as I said, Salamanders are aggressive. Salamanders can lay down the hurt with these things. Strength of the Primarch, 1 CP, another thing that they can lay down the hurt with. Use this stratagem in the fight phase. Select a Salamander's unit from your army. Again, it can be any Salamander's unit. It could be your Dreadnought, for example. It could be Terminators. It could be whatever you need. During the fight phase, basically, they add 1 to the strength characteristics of models in that unit, and when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model in that unit on an unmodified wound roll of a 6, double the damage characteristics of that weapon for that attack. So, for example, if you chuck it on a Dreadnought, that Dreadnought's going to add 1 to its strength characteristic, and on modified wound rolls of 6s, that'll be double the amount of damage. A standard Dreadnought Power Fist does 3 damage, and instead of 3 damage, it'll be 6 damage. You put it on some Terminators, instead of doing D3 or flat 3 with some hammers, it's going to be double unmodified wound rolls of 6s. I like it. It's just another way Salamanders can lay down the pain. Here's another way they can lay down the pain. Fires of Battle, and this one only costs 1 CP. Basically, you pick a unit in your shooting or the opponent's charge phase. And when that unit, so you're picking a friendly unit and it's shooting. And you're either shooting in your shooting phase or you're shooting in Overwatch. Any flamer or melter weapons for a model in that unit, so not the whole unit, but a model in that unit, on modified wound rolls of 4 up, the target suffers a mortal wound in addition to any normal damage they have. So here you've got your flamer aggressors. They're charging forward. You stick Flamecraft on them so you don't roll 2d6. Instead, you just get 12 auto hits with a model in that unit. So 12 auto hits. You've got +1 to wound on your aggressor. And how many 4-ups can you roll to do mortal wound in addition to the normal damage? Or back to the Invicta or tactical suit. Stick Flamecraft on that dude so he's getting 12 auto hits instead of 2d6 auto hits with +1 to wound, because the tactical doctrine is in effect. How many 4-ups can you get to put a mortal wound in addition to any normal damage on that incendium cannon? Fires of Battle, 1 CP. On a 4-up, the target suffers mortal wounds in addition. That is absolutely brutal. Being able to do it in Overwatch as well is just icing on the cake, really, because your opponents could be in for a nasty surprise when they come charging forward a unit with flame weapons on it. You're going to seriously think twice about charging Salamander units now if they've got any flame weapons in there, because, yeah, you'll probably just want to shoot them instead. Next up for 2 CP, we have Rites of Vulcan. This is one of the best ones in the book, so I'll read it all the way through so you guys get a clear understanding of what it is. So use this stratagem at the start of your movement phase if the tactical doctrine is active. So the tactical doctrine needs to be active. Until the start of the next battle round, when resolving an attack made with a rapid fire or assault weapon by a Salamander's model from your army, on a modified wound roll of a 6 for the armor penetration characteristic of that weapon is improved by an additional 1 for that attack. You can only use this stratagem once per battle. Now, why can you only use it once per battle? The reason why is you pop it during when the tactical doctrine is in effect, and it affects your entire army. All the assault weapons, all the rapid fire weapons in your army for that turn have +1 AP when you get unmodified wound rolls of 6s. So your assault bolters, your what are they called, bolt rifles, anything that's AP -1, for example, like assault bolters on your jumpy dudes or your bolt rifles on your intercessors. The tactical doctrine is in effect, so they're all AP -2. You pop this doctrine on unmodified wound rolls of 6s, they all become AP -3. That is one big fusillade of nastiness that erupts across the battle grid in turn 2 potentially, and could seriously hurt the opponent. If you've lined up if your jumpy dudes are coming at the right locations and your intercessors have stood still, so they're maximizing bolter discipline special ability, and you're rapid firing away with only rapid fire and assault weapons, but yeah, unmodified wound rolls of 6s doing extra AP. That's just another nasty way that Salamanders can hurt the opponent. For 1 CP, we've got Despite the Odds. When the stratagem, use the stratagem at the end of your turn if a Salamander's Warlord from your army is on the battlefield and you did not achieve any tactical objectives this turn. Generate a new tactical objective. You can only use this stratagem if the missions you're playing uses tactical objectives. That's quite nice. So use it at the end of your turn. If you haven't scored any tactical objectives, draw another tactical objective. It might turn out that you've just suddenly scored one. Immolation Protocols turns any flamer weapons into pistols for 1 CP. Why would you want to do that? We'll say your flamer aggressors are locked up in an assault and you can't shoot them. Well, for 1 CP in your shooting phase, you can suddenly turn those flamer weapons into pistol weapons. And it says here, assault D6 flame weapons become pistol D6, for example. So your aggressors are locked up in assault. There's 2 or 3 guys that they just want to finish off. And you could do that with Immolation Protocols. For 2 CP, self-sacrifice again is another great, nice little stratagem. Basically, at the start of your opponent's shooting phase, you pick a Salamander's infantry unit from your army. And any other infantry units that are within 6 inches of that unit can't be targeted unless they're the closest. So self-sacrifice, you pick an infantry unit, say you've got some intercessors just in front of your assault aggressors that are moving up the table. You make sure your assault aggressors, your flaming aggressors are within 6 inches of that infantry unit. You say, right, that infantry unit there, they're self-sacrificing. It means the enemy unit can target the crap out of the self-sacrifice unit, but any other infantry units within 6 inches of them can't get shot at unless they're the closest. You want to keep your Devastators safer at the back of the table. You want to keep your Centurions safer back at the table. All you need to do is pop 2 CP a turn or for a couple of turns so that the intercessors in front or even a cheaper unit of scouts in front is getting shot at rather than the infantry units behind. How that interacts with the characters, how that will interact with the character keyword, I'm not entirely sure. That one will need a FAQ. But along with Flamecraft, along with Strength of the Primarch, along with a number of these other stratagems, I can see this one being used a lot as well. Unlike the Imperial Fist book, I think the best way to make the Salamanders book sing is to at least bring 2 battalions or a brigade. There's a number of command points in here that you're going to want to use again and again and again. Self-sacrifice is one of those that you're going to want to use again and again and again. You're going to want to make sure that the enemy isn't shooting at key units, your Devastators or your Centurions in the backfield, or isn't shooting at your Flamer aggressors as they're making their way up the table. And it's 2 CP, so it's a bit pricey. And you're going to want to pop it more than once. You're probably going to want to pop it in a couple of turns, but denying the opponent the ability to shoot at units within 6 inches of a particular, because you can spread out an infantry unit quite a long way to make sure it covers 2, 3, 4 even infantry units behind them, so they're not getting targeted at all unless they're closer to the enemy than the unit that you're self-sacrificing. That's good. For 2 CP, you can select a character to rise from the ashes when one of your characters dies, 2 CPs, and then you need a 4-up as well. So it's a 50-50 chance. But if you get a 4-up, that character comes back again with 1 wound remaining, as close to the position where they died from as possible, at least so long as they're at least 1 inch away from the enemy. That could deny Kingslayer, that could deny... what's the one that you have to kill a psyker? That one that you have to kill a psyker. But yeah, having your characters pop back up again with 1 wound left is nice. It's only 2 CP. For 1 CP, we have Vengeance for Istat Van 5. It only works if you're fighting Word Bearers, Iron Warriors, Night Lords, or Alpha Legion, and only works when you're punching them, when you're in melee. But you can reroll all hits, which is quite nice. How often are you going to come up against Word Bearers, Iron Warriors, Night Lords, or Alpha Legion? I'm not sure, but re-rolling all hits in melee for only 1 CP it's a nice little one there. Stand your ground, pick a Salamander's infantry unit that's not a servitor and hasn't advanced in this phase or the previous phase, which is annoying. You're going to have to remember that you didn't advance in this phase or the previous phase. But when resolving an attack made with a weapon that has a damage characteristic of 1 against a model in that unit, add 1 to the saving throws. This will stack if they're in cover as well, so your framer aggressors could be in cover somewhere, so they'll get +1 to their saving throws. If they haven't been advancing, they get another +1 to their saving throws. If they're out in the open, they get +1 to their saving throws, so long as the damage characteristics have at least a 1 damage. It doesn't affect invulnerable saves. Remember, Salamanders count any AP -1 weapons as AP 0 anyway, so this ability stacking on top of the standard Salamander's ability means that there's going to be a unit out there that is highly likely to survive a fusillade of attacks coming in. You could also use transhuman physiology, that stratagem from the main rulebook, which means that an infantry unit doesn't get wounded on a wound of 1, 2, or 3 as well. Stacking stand your ground with that one, with a unit that is in cover, stacked as well with the Salamander's ability, which ignores AP -1 weapons. It's a potential to keep a unit alive there that is going to get lit up. A unit that you really, really want to keep alive. Self-sacrifice as well. Going back to that again because it's just so good. There's as well as having stratagems and abilities in this book for Salamanders to really punch with, there's stratagems and abilities in this book as well, which allows Salamanders to soak up more pain than the typical Space Marine stratagems allow you to do. It's just good. There's a lot of stratagems in here that you're going to want to use. Born Protectors for 2 CP. This is situational, but in some cases it's going to be crazy good. Essentially, you pay Born Protectors, you play Born Protectors for 2 CP in your opponent's charge phase, and any friendly Salamander units within 12 inches of the unit that is the target of the charge can fire Overwatch. So that isn't so great because Overwatch hits on 6s. However, there could be some Flamer aggressors or something with a Flamer weapon which is within Flamer range, which isn't the target of a charge, and the enemy is charging another unit. So then you play Born Protectors, and suddenly these Flamers, if they're in range, will unload on that unit. So that's what I mean by situational. Hitting on 6s with just bolt guns, with loads and loads of extra bolt guns, isn't necessarily going to hurt the opponent, but if they're charging a unit, and there's a unit nearby with Flamer weapons, and those Flamers are in range, then they'll be able to fire Overwatch as well, which is brutal, and units within 12 inches of them can perform heroic interventions as well. So the selected unit warrior, in addition, if that charge is successful, the selected unit can perform heroic interventions as if it was a character, and it can move up to 2d6, but it must end that move closer to the unit that charged and cannot move within an inch of an enemy unit. So say you haven't got flamer weapons, say instead you pop Born Protectors on a unit of Terminators or a Punchy Punch unit, a Dreadnought for example, then you can suddenly heroically intervene 2d6 inches. So the enemy charges your unit of whatever they're charging, you pop Born Protectors on your Redemptor Dreadnought, and then he comes charging in 2d6 inches heroic intervention. Now he might fail that 2d6 inch counter punch, but suddenly your enemy thought he was safe. He was just charging that tank over there and he wasn't going to get hit by anything. And having an angry Dreadnought run up behind him and punch him in the face might, yeah, it could sting. It's situational, but if you're able to pull it off, it will be glorious. Relentless Determination for 1 CP is also jolly good, and this is one of the ones that you're going to put on vehicles, because basically you pop this 1 CP stratagem at the end of your movement phase, and that unit counts as though it didn't move when it fires for the purposes of heavy weapons. And if it has a damage characteristic, say it's a Predator for example, you've moved it out of the way to keep it safe, or say it's some Devastators, you've moved it out of the way to keep it safe, suddenly they can fire as though they stood still without that -1 to hit. And if it has a damage profile, then you double the number of wounds remaining for the purposes of determining what row to use on that damage table when it's shooting away. So you can move your Redemptor Dreadnought and still fire that Redemptor Dreadnought if it's even got 4 wounds left, it'll be able to move and fire as though it was on the full profile without any negatives, and it's only 1 CP. I like it. There's 3 other stratagems in here, and they're the usual ones that we see in the other Codex supplements: the ability to give a Warlord trait to an additional character, the ability to give Relics of the chapter to non-successor chapters, the standard 3 that we've seen. And talking about Relics, there's the Relics of Nocturne, so only the Salamanders can take the Relics of Nocturne unless you spend that 1 CP on, I think it's Exemplar of the Promethean Creed or Trust of Prometheus. It's one of the ones in there that you can give Relics of Nocturne to Successor Chapters Tactics 2, Successor Chapters 2. Otherwise, you're stuck with the Special Issue War Gear if you're a Successor. And the Successor Issue War Gear, we've got the standard 4 that we've got in all the other supplementary codexes: Adamantium Mantle, Artificer Armor, Mastercrafted Weapon, and Digital Weapons. But there's 4 more ones in here that you can give to Salamander Successors or Salamanders, and they are Obsidian Aquila. When a friendly chapter model within 6 inches of a model with this relic loses a wound, roll a d6. On a 6 up, that wound isn't lost. So that one's quite nice because it's a 6-inch bubble and it says enemy friendly chapter model. So that would also apply to tanks as well. A 6-inch bubble, 6 up, feel no pain. That'll be good for your parking lot in the backfield. Promethean Plate. When resolving an attack against a model with this relic, unmodified wound rolls of 1, 2, or 3 always fail. Dragon Rage Bolts. You select a bolt weapon, and instead of firing that bolt weapon, normally you fire 1 Dragonfire Bolt. And remember, you're a Salamander, so you can re-roll a hit and re-roll a wound roll. And so long as you wound, it does d6 wounds instead of the standard 1 wound that bolt weaponry does. So imagine, it's essentially, it's similar to Hellfire Shells. It's not mortal wounds though, but yeah, d6 wounds with 1 bolt gun. And then the last one is the Drake Blade, which replaces a power sword, a mastercrafted power sword, or a combat knife. And it's strength user -4 AP and damage 2. And on modified wound rolls of 6, the target suffers a mortal wound in addition to any normal damage. Those are the special issue war gear stuff for Successors and for Salamanders. And then you have the Relics of Nocturne. Remember, these only apply to Salamanders unless you pay that CP. So, Vulcan's Sigil. Add 1 to the tax characteristic of a model with this relic. Fine, fair enough. But once per battle, he can hold Vulcan's Sigil aloft, and all friendly Salamander units within 6 inches also get a +1. The model with the relic gets a +2 because he's permanently got a +1. And once per battle, he gets a +2, and everything within 6 inches of him gets a +1 in the fight phase, attacks in the fight phase. So that one's quite interesting, particularly if you're going aggressive with your aggressors. The next relic is Drake Smiter. It's a Thunder Hammer, and it's an AP-4 Thunder Hammer instead of an AP-3. It's still unwieldy, which isn't great, but any unmodified wound rolls of a 6, you add 3 to the damage characteristics of this weapon. And Thunder Hammers are already damage 3. So if you roll 6s to wound, those 3s become 6s, which is crazy good. Wrath of Prometheus is a bolt gun or mastercrafted bolt gun, and it gets this profile, rapid fire 1 at 30-inch range, strength 5, -2 damage, and -2 AP, and a flat 3 damage. Now that's interesting because, say, the tactical doctrine is in effect, it'll be strength 5, -3 AP, and a flat 3 damage. That's a nasty bolt gun. The Tome of Velcona is for librarians. Your librarian will know an additional power, and they can add 1 when they cast. And the Salamander's Mantle, when resolving an attack against a model with this relic, subtract 1 from the wound roll. Nocturne's Vengeance. It's a combi flamer. So combi flamers are normally damage 1, the bolt gun and the flamer variant, but Nocturne's Vengeance is a damage 2 bolt gun and flamer variant. The Mastercrafted Flamer portion of it as well has a 12-inch range instead of the standard 8-inch range, so that's nice. And Helm of Draklos, Primaris model only, add 1 to the wounds characteristics of a model with this relic and subtract 1 from the leadership characteristics of models in enemy units while they're within 6 inches of a model with this relic. So essentially there's 3 pimped weapons there and 4 other things that are a little bit interesting, one of them only affecting a Psyker. Nothing incredibly broken and over the top in the relics or the special issue war gear stuff. Some interesting choices to make, but nothing crazy powerful that makes you immediately say, oh, I definitely want that one. That's it for the review. What stands out in the Codex Salamanders supplement is the beautiful stratagems. There's a lot more tasty stratagems in this one than there is in the Imperial Fist book. There's 5, 6 of them that you're going to want to use again and again and again. And you're definitely going to want to bring flamer weapons when you're playing Salamanders for that additional wounds and for the stratagems such as Flamecraft, and re-rolling a hit roll and re-rolling a wound roll with Salamanders, just their basic abilities. I think there's some decent, strong combinations in here, and an aggressive, well-written Salamanders list in the hands of a Salamanders player that knows what they're doing, so basically not me, is going to do some significant pain on the battle grid. It's going to hurt their opponents. It's an aggressive book. It's a powerful book. It's not Iron Hand stupid, but it's pretty stupid in places, to be fair. It's pretty strong in places. Anyway, that's my review of this one, /reveal, /showcase of this one here. Oh, there's a character. Should we talk about Adrax Agontain? Let's quickly talk about him. But before we do, it's probably worth pointing out Vulcan Heston's still in here, and his Forge Father rule. I mean, Vulcan is a boss. Vulcan's always been a boss with his 3-up and vulnerable save and stuff, but he's got the Forge Father rule, which is reroll hit rolls and reroll wound rolls for attacks made by flame or melter weapons by models in a Salamander's unit while they're within 6 inches of Vulcan. So again, having Vulcan stood next to some flamer aggressors, or at least 2 units of flamer aggressors with that self-sacrifice unit in front so that they're not getting hit at, and suddenly re-rolling all fail wounds. It doesn't even say fail wounds, it just says wounds. To any units within 6 inches of him, or any models within 6 inches of him. Vulcan, with some of those stratagems and with their new key abilities, we're gonna see him show up. We're gonna see him turn up, particularly as he's only 130 points as well. So Adrax Agontain, the new dude, well, he's got a flamer, and it's a 12-inch flamer. Strength 4, AP -1, 12-inch flamer. He's got a great big hammer. It's still -1 to hit with his hammer, but at 5 attacks and at a flat 4 damage with his hammer, he's going to be doing some work. And he's got add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by friendly models while they're within 6 inches of him. Which means he's also getting add 1 to his wound rolls because he will be in range of his own aura. But yeah, adding 1 to wound rolls for attacks within 6 inches of this guy. Don't know if I mentioned, that's in melee only. He's a captain, so you reroll hit rolls of 1 around him. and you reduce all damage against him by 1 to a minimum of 1, and he's 140 points. So you're going to be bringing this guy along if you're going to get punchy, essentially, if you're going to bring some Hammonators along or something. He's going to be, yeah, he's going to be a punchy, aggressive, upfield type of guy. So that's it for the Salamanders book. It's a nasty book with lots of combos, overlapping stuff in here. It's going to be aggressive when played well. I'm looking forward to seeing it on the battlefield in the hands of a seasoned general that really knows what he's doing. That's it for my review. Thanks again to Games Workshop for sending it through to me. You guys are legend. Talking about legends, all the DZTV patrons out there. If you've got any questions, then don't forget to ask me or Liam in the Ask Winters and Liam slot in the Discord, and we will answer your questions with regarding these codexes, these 2 new ones that we have before us. You can check out Liam's thing as well. Liam did a thing on this book too. But yeah, thanks to Games Workshop. Thanks to everyone else. Hope you enjoyed the video. Happy wargaming.